board.
I can only hang around for the first half of this as well, just to give you all a warning.
I'm opening up the document. Reminder to everyone to please sign in. Do we have a, today's the 10th. Anyone interested in being the note taker today?
I'm happy to take notes for the first half.
Awesome. Thank you. I guess let's get started with status updates. I can share a few quick updates. I just merged a couple PRs to the life cycle to add some of the features that we want for the next release. So that's good news. We have a couple other PRs that are in flight. I think Jesse's validate stack is in need of a re-review, and asset packages, I adopted that PR from Dan. So I think it's missing one piece of logic that I want to add, but it's almost complete. So good progress there. That's all from my side.
I was out part of the week and my PR is ready, I hope, for the last review.
Is merged.
Oh, really? Oh my
Yeah.
God. Okay, so it was merged. Great. So yeah, I hope to, today and tomorrow to just review a few more PRs. I might be out starting next week for 2 weeks. Sorry about the last minute notice, but yeah.
Enjoy it.
I will, definitely.
Nothing really to update from my side for relevant to implementations.
Same here, other than I have it on my to-do list to get my WIP image util PR in a state to hand off to Juan. I did merge one sub-team specific RFC, the one regarding lifecycle documentation, into the RFC's repo. I created an issue sort of suggesting that we document that process somewhere in the lifecycle repo, like release MD, even though that wasn't called out specifically in the RFC. If we wanted to sort of like capture that outcome differently, close it.
I think it makes sense there. We have stuff like ensure the spec is released, and I think it's prudent to call that out. All right, I guess we can move on to release planning. I can share my screen if we want to look at the milestones, the issues that are in the next milestone. Let me pull that up. Share. So everyone can see lifecycle 012.0. So I want to say that I'm just going to check the ones that are in flight. I'm going to check this one because I don't think there's anything to do with it, but whatever. So this one has already put up a PR to image util, so it's being worked on. And I think this is all the issues that have movement, as far as I know. This is a chore.
I think that the last one is assigned to Dan.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
maybe
we should take him off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. How do I do this?
Unless he continues to work on this.
I don't think we can count on that.
Exactly.
So I guess it might be worth pinging Marty, I think, just to ask what he's been able to do with it, if he's had a chance to look at it really. Maybe when we're, I don't know, May 6th, June 10th. I think maybe it's okay to ask at this point. Otherwise, we could pick it up. And the other one is this fail fast if mixins are not satisfied by the stack, which I don't know if anyone has interest in working on that. But if not, we can find a person to take it, hopefully.
If I won't be out starting next week, so I would love to take this. If I'll be out, I have a feeling that it will be closed before I'm back.
I'll leave you when you know for sure. We can. No, I hope you'll be out because I know I want whatever. That would be a good thing. Is it possible to make any statement about when we might be able to ship with the information that we have? I always think that things will go faster than they actually do. But
the first few issues are in like pretty good state, right? They'll probably be merged by the end of next week, right?
Yeah, like this. So this is like PR ready for review.
Yeah.
This is like PR almost finished. PR is up. I don't think we can do anything about this. I made a comment about it, but like probably not a lot of work here. This is the image util PR is already up. So it's like, a little bit of extra work to add it to the life cycle, but most of the work has been done already. So I feel good. I feel like maybe even this week for these PRs. It's really like there are two issues that, as far as we know, have not, any movement at this point, and how long will it take to get both of them to completion? It's okay if we don't know.
As good first issue, so it's probably really depends on who will pick them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe we can ping what's his name? I'm not sure. The one that's working on provide mixin information. Hopefully next week we'll maybe have better estimation on when we'll be able to.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess that concludes our release planning. Do we have anything in needs discussion? We have quite a lot of things related to stack packs that need discussion. And I guess this is sort of a good time to mention that there's been some questions raised about whether stack packs is the best way to solve the problem that we have. This came up in the leadership summit. Stack packs are very, very complicated. They have a lot of features, and maybe something simpler with less features would make the majority of our users happy and be quicker to deliver. I don't think there's been like anything more concrete established than that. But that is a conversation that has been started.
Who is like, did you start a conversation in the leadership meeting and then someone continued it, or it just, you had like a short conversation and that's it? Because I'm just the reason that I'm asking is because if we decide to stop the work on Stackpacks, it's probably better to do it as soon as possible because we're all working only on this. So,
So I think what we established is that everything that's in phase 1 will not be thrown away, right? If we don't do Stackpacks, it's all still has value, right? So this is something that we'll need to, like, and my understanding is there's no guarantee that we're changing direction here, right? But it's just the idea has been put forth, right? But it should be, I guess, clarified before we start working on phase 2, because that's the one that's really going to, right, it's going to matter, right? If we start doing stuff in phase 2 and then we decide not to do Stackpacks as it currently exists or Stackpacks at all, that will be wasted work.
To give some background here, I think there are probably 2 motivations that cause this conversation to come up. Number one being the experience of the complexity of working on this, sort of like how long it's taking and how hard it has been for everyone to wrap their heads around all of the implications of it. And then just a general feeling that maybe the spec is too complex and a simpler spec is more desirable. And this is adding to the complexity of the spec rather than removing it. So sort of a question that Joe raised in the leadership summit, which made it interesting because he had been the big proponent for pushing this forward and prioritizing it above all things. We sort of asked the question, like, looking at these downsides, stepping back, putting aside the sunk costs we've already put into planning and reviewing and working on this, is it still the right path to move forward on? And I don't know exactly what the answer to that is, but I think it is a good question, given that, you know, despite all the work we've put into it, there's still a lot of work between here and done, especially considering all the features that were laid out in that RFC and before we, you know, dedicate the next several months to continuing down that path. I think we all need to feel that is the best way forward.
like maybe I missed it, but what does Joe think about this? Does he still think that Stackpacks is the best thing, or is he open, like, for other ideas?
He's open to other ideas. He says he's still, you know, biased in favor of it being the best thing, but, you know, really in a less adamant way than he was before. Was that a good summary, Natalie? Did I miss anything important?
I think so. I would just add that, you know, thus far, right, obviously this has been a conversation that was not happening in the open, but there is, you know, efforts underway to bring that out into a more public forum so that people can weigh in. So just, I guess, you know, stay tuned. That's something that I think is very important to happen, right? By the way, is there a reason that it was not publicly shared until now? Or it's just, I mean, you start the conversation in that forum, which makes sense.
I don't think that there was a reason like that it was purposefully, you know, kept secret. I think some of these conversations happened when the RFC was originally approved. So they're definitely conversations we're willing to have in the open. The reason this conversation started again in a forum that wasn't public was because one of the motivations for not like taking a recording of the summit and posting it was to create a safe space to ask hard questions or have conflict if that needed to happen, which can be hard when something's public. And I think that setting did allow for some of these harder questions to get asked, but it doesn't mean that they should be answered privately.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So I guess we'll all just kind of look forward to seeing more conversations happening, and hopefully also, stepping in to add our opinions, because I think that my impression is that the thoughts and feelings of the implementation team are very important to this question, right? And our knowledge of what it will be like to implement this stuff is going to be something that's factors in to how we consider each option, or whatever options there are. So we should all speak up and share what we know.
Who's going to manage these conversations, meetings, whatever? Because as I said, I think that we should try to make a decision pretty soon.
We assigned Joe the task of making sure a decision gets made, rather than making a decision, but we assigned it to him at a time that he wasn't there. So the owner of that conversation may change, but someone will own the conversation.
Great.
Cool. But I think of all the folks who have input into that conversation, the voice of this group is probably the most important one, because I feel like maybe downplaying the voice of this group, sort of how we ended up in a situation where we've put a lot of time into something that might not be the right path forward. Maybe it is the right path forward, right? But just sort of if we say the big con to this is complexity, adding complexity to the spec, I feel like you all are the ones that have the best sense of how much complexity is adding, and therefore can weigh the cost of that con, right?
So that was quite a needs discussion. I guess, should we move on? Is there anything more to say here? I know we have RFCs for implementation team, and nothing further on our agenda. Since I have you all, I suppose, there is one, I'll share my screen again. There's one issue and needs discussion that doesn't relate to StackPacks. It's this registry URL thing. I think it might have been discussed when I was away. I think I saw a note about it in the meeting doc. I'm just wondering, should we close this? Is there anything else we can do? Just, I guess, context is not super obvious. This is when you're configuring your secret for your registry and you don't put a trailing slash behind v1, you might, I think this is actually, you will, I had some weirdness in my previous environment, but you will get you will not be able to authenticate with the registry, because we're doing, GGCR is doing an exact string match here, right? And this is GGCR is the one that's reading the Docker config or whatever it is, I'm a little bit fuzzy on exactly how this happens in a Kubernetes environment, but like my takeaway from reading the code was that we don't have much control over how this happens. I could be wrong, but I'm just curious to know what others think.
I just remember that we said that we waited for you because you put the last comment, you had some ideas about it. So this is why we didn't discuss it.
With my limited understanding, I'm of the opinion that we should just close this and maybe better document how to set up your secret, because I don't think that this is our issue. Like, but at the same time, I don't feel 100% sure. So
Is this something we want to PR into GDCR?
Maybe we could just ask about it, right? Because I honestly don't know how to PR. It's also like that in Docker itself, right? So it's like, I feel like that's the reason why they're doing it that way. But we could
really want to change like something that the user inserted. I mean, because it doesn't. I mean, I don't know.
The question is about like when you're matching, right? In your in the keychain, when the keychain is saying like, is this secret for this registry? It seems like the absence or presence of a trailing slash should not be fundamental to the answer there, because in a URL, the absence or presence of a trailing slash doesn't matter, right? In general. I think why this shows up in platforms like Tecton, I think also in platforms like KPAG, is that you're basically creating this Docker config JSON, the user sort of taking responsibility for the contents of it. Whereas when you're using Pack or something on the local file system, you're doing a Docker login and then Docker is taking responsibility for it. So when Docker writes it, it can be perfectly consistent about whether it includes that trailing slash or not. And then when Docker reads that value, it doesn't have to ask the question because it knows that it wrote it. It generally is the one that wrote the Docker config JSON file. But in a situation where users are writing it, I think it would make sense to be a bit more flexible because it's bothers everyone all the time.
Yeah, I don't mind reaching out to in GGCR and just asking about it, because yeah, it's probably not, we can't write any code, right, to make this go away, but maybe they've also heard complaints of this nature. And then I might close this issue because like, what can we do, right?
It's like maybe if we got creative, we could do something, but given GCR is used all over the place, including like directly in other tools, it seems like it would just make sense to solve it there if we were going to.
Yeah. Cool. I'll take this on to just make it go away from our needs discussion stuff. And with that, we do have RFCs. I don't know. I think we decided that we would just, instead of going through them one by one, if there's any that people felt were needing discussion, we could raise them. I think these are all, this one's actively being discussed. I think it was discussed yesterday in the working group, as well as this one. This is blocked. And I can't remember where we landed on the last one. I think Jesse was gonna open a new RFC.
I think that Jesse's going to work on it, but as far as I remember, he said that he's like still in progress, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
that was another one that scared me. Like we were talking about complexity, right? Like, sorry, if I just click through to this one. Nope. There's this thing, right? Like nope, not this one. this one, like the matrix of compatibility when you have new and old build packs and also new and old platforms and just making them all work together. Yeah, I think we sort of said like the benefits are worth it, but the road to this like end goal of having, you know, a perfectly organized file system is going to be bumpy. So that's all. Just I don't know if there's anything we can do about it right now or ever, but it's like, how do we manage all this complexity that we already have in the life cycle? Like it's already hard to do stuff.
It's a really good question. Maybe we could investigate file structures that are less disruptive, even if they're less ideal. Like if we had different subdirectories underneath the build pack instead of underneath what we're calling output or workspace for different build pack level things, it would be easier to organize that way.
Yeah. I remember we said that, and the only real downside, which, you know, it is a downside, but I remember we said like that will exclude certain layer names, right? You will never be able to have a layer named like CNB or config or whatever we decide to call it. And that is a downside, but I do wonder if it's a downside worth taking in favor of something simpler.
Yeah.
I shall wait and make that comment on Jesse's upcoming RFC.
Sorry, I just realized I was late to my next thing. I gotta bounce, but I'll see y'all.
I have nothing else.
Great. So let's finish her up.
All right. Thank you all for joining. Bye.